Welcome to console World of Warships. Yes, I have been playing World of Warships Legends on my PlayStation, and this is a game that I really wanted to try out, but I didn't have a console. But now that I finally got one again, this game is a really fun experience for me because it reminds me of World of Warships a couple years ago. There's a little bit more fun to be had, in my opinion, in the console game compared to the main PC game. And I'll explain that a little bit. But for those of you who don't know, the console game is created differently than the PC one. It looks similar, but the philosophy is slightly different. The goal of this game, as far as I know, is to create a more fast-paced, a little more action-oriented game compared to the PC one. And I think they've succeeded for the most part on that, because you get right into the game and you're already able to shoot at people, and there's not this giant 5-minute waiting time of, you know, people trying to get into positions and sniping from 25 kilometers and all that stuff. This game gets you into the thick of it much quicker. The way I've been describing it to people who've asked me about it is that it feels like you start at the mid-game of the PC version. That's what this game feels like to me. And of course, the mid and late game of the PC game is where the fun is. That's where you get to make cool pushing plays, you get to have fun brawls, all this good stuff. And this console game pretty much gives you that from the start. Of course, there's going to be blowout games. There's going to be situations where, you know, your team just runs off the map and doesn't do anything. But that's common on the PC game too, so I wouldn't call that a unique downside to the console version. Of course, the console game does have less players, and I think that contributes to a more fun game. Being 9 versus 9 rather than 12 versus 12, it gives you more opportunities to have a bigger impact on the game, and it opens up the maps a lot more for pushing. I think one of the biggest issues with the PC game is there's really nowhere to push until at least 4 or 5 ships have died on both teams. And that's just because the way the maps are designed, there's positions and opportunities for a lot of ships to just camp an island and prevent an entire flank from pushing, right? A Des Moines or maybe a Worcester sitting on an island getting spotting from a DD who's torping, you're not going to push into that ever, right? And this game, with the somewhat fewer players in each match, it allows for a lot more interesting plays, interesting pushes earlier on. Now, all that said, it sounds like I love this game, and I do. I think the console version is, I don't know about the superior version, but definitely a more fun experience than the PC game. But there are issues. There's issues with every game, and a lot of that comes down to balance. A big issue with the console game is the way they've decided to balance each class out. And my biggest issue that I have with that is they've made destroyers just insanely strong. Just absolutely ridiculously strong. And that's mainly down to their concealment. They've essentially buffed concealment on most destroyers by around 20% compared to their PC version. So a ship like the Kamikaze is probably the most egregious example, where the ship can get under 4.5 kilometer concealment, and the torpedoes that reach out to, I think, over 8 kilometers. Yeah, it's pretty crazy for a ship of that tier. Of course, that's low to mid tier, and yeah, when you're new to the game and grinding up, let's say the Iowa line, and you're in your you're in your Wyoming, and suddenly there's a Kitakaze that's 4.5 kilometers away from you, shooting torps at you every every 45 seconds or so. That's not a very fun experience, and yeah, and that's one of the reasons I think the console community has been so excited for aircraft carriers to come into the game, just because of how strong destroyers are, and aircraft carriers can help counter DDs. The interesting thing I found is that aircraft carriers actually seem reasonably balanced in this game. They're not the all-powerful ship that is the PC version of aircraft carriers. They don't actually have rocket planes at the current moment. I suspect they're going to implement the new rocket planes that are coming to PC, where they kind of strafe with their main guns on the planes before they actually do their rocket attack. And that gives you a little bit of time to maneuver and dodge as a destroyer. And I think that's a lot more balanced, and I do like that change. And I'm assuming that'll come to console as well, because they did say that they were trying to balance CVs more. And I think they succeeded. I still don't like CVs in this game because, well, it's not World of Warplanes. I'm playing a ship game. Why am I fighting against planes that I don't really have much control over whether I take damage or not? So it's a little bit frustrating still, but it's nowhere near as bad as the PC version. The main thing is the destroyers and how nuts they are. And before you say, well, you're just playing a battleship, they're supposed to be countering, DDs are supposed to be countering battleships. I have played the destroyers in this game a little bit already. In fact, I have a kamikaze on this account with a very low point commander, and it just crushes everything. The concealment spotting, the damage torps do, it's just insane. And yeah, I do believe that the destroyers are a little bit overtuned in this game, and that can get frustrating, but it's nowhere near as frustrating as aircraft carriers on PC. And that's one of the reasons I like to say that I do enjoy this game a little bit more than the PC version right now, because an aircraft carrier, you just can't run from it, right? There's no way to get away from an aircraft carrier, whereas a destroyer, they're limited in their range and their ability to kind of terrorize the whole map, right? A CV can terrorize everyone at any time, right? And destroyer is kind of limited to its flank or where it's at, right? So you know you're kind of safe from it for a little bit, depending on the side of the map you're on, which is cool. So this game is a lot of fun. Now, for a Battleship player, this game could be a little bit frustrating. That kind of salvo that you just saw is pretty rare until you get things very, very, very upgraded. So the way the commander system in this game works is very different from that of PC, and it gives your ship a ton more buffs, and they're very unique buffs. And some of the things that you can buff on your ship is actually dispersion. And I believe that these ships and these battleships are being balanced around a fully upgraded dispersion build commander. And when you just start out the game and you don't have that fully upgraded dispersion build commander, it's really frustrating. I had a rough time grinding to the Iowa, and even when I first got the Iowa, I was really frustrated. And that was down to not having the right commander for the ship. And you can't even buy the commander with gold if you wanted to, right, or doubloons. You have to unlock them with loot boxes, which you can buy the loot boxes with doubloons, but there's so many commanders that that's not really a good way to go about it. You get a free loot box every week just by playing the game, and there's like 50 commanders, so you just gotta hope that you get the right one. I eventually saved up the 900,000 experience for your commander just to get this proper commander for the Iowa, and I will say it's much better now that I've gotten that. It's not perfect by any means, but it definitely feels a lot better and a lot more like the Iowa that I know on PC. You know, running full dispersion build type of deal. So if you're on PC and you're looking to get into this game, just know the frustrating pain points, especially for a new player, are going to be getting those commanders, because that is how you get the crazy concealment on these destroyers, right? You need the right commander to get that crazy concealment, and if you're playing against somebody who has that commander and you don't, you're at a pretty massive disadvantage. I would say even more so than the PC game, commanders matter the most in this game, and getting them is very difficult and can be somewhat RNG with the loot box system. So that would be the biggest downside to this game, I would say, is getting those commanders. Once you have them, you know, for an experienced player, once you've got them, it's totally fine. It's actually really cool because you can change the skill points on your commander whenever you want to for free. There is no doubloon cost or elite commander XP cost associated with retraining your commander. And you can move commanders around to different ships anytime you want to. It's super cool. The whole skill points that you can get on these commanders, each commander has different talents and skills you can get. It's really, really cool. It's a very unique system, and it adds a lot of flavor to the game, to the point where you're not sure what people are running on their ships. Are they more gun build? Are they more concealment build? Are they a tank build? Are they a fire starting build? Like what build they have on their ship is different, and it's diverse, and it's very, very cool. Compare that to the PC game, where pretty much everybody runs the same build on every ship, right? If you got a battleship, you're running a tank build these days. You got a cruiser, you're running a concealment and damage output focused build, right? You're running a destroyer, you get as much concealment as you can. And if you're a torpedo boat, you run the torpedo upgrades. If you're a gunboat, you run the gun upgrades. It's pretty standard these days. Whereas this game, I think there's a little more diversity in the commander builds, and that's super cool. It's just sad to me how difficult it is to get that special commander out there. Each ship seems to have one or two commanders that they really want to have, and were kind of designed around that ship. There's a couple commanders for each ship that it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense why that's there. But getting them it takes a long time. And I have grinded up the Iowa, and I think I got this commander around the time that I was on the Colorado, which is the tier just below this Iowa, tier 7. The tiers work a little bit differently in this game. Tier 7 is top tier outside of the legendary tier, which you can think of as tier 10. Tier 10 ships show up as legendaries, and you don't grind them out the normal way. They're kind of like the dockyard in the PC game, except it's more the original dockyard, where with Puerto Rico. If you guys remember that, where there was a constant tick of points grinding out the ship for you, except there's no time limit, right? That was the big problem with Puerto Rico, was there was a time limit, and it was a crazy time limit that you had to get through. In this game, there is no time limit. You can just slowly tick points away on whatever legendary you want, and you'll eventually get it, which is an interesting way to unlock tier 10 ships. And I've seen some complaints in the console community about these legendaries being so strong and tier 7s not really being able to fight them. But the tier 7s, for the most part, remind me a lot of tier 8s and 9s in the PC game. Of course, Iowa as a tier 7 is, well, a tier 9 in the PC game. And other ships are other tier 8s and 9s. And honestly, I haven't had that much issue fighting against the legendary tier, and maybe that's just because I'm used to fighting tier 10s with tier 8 ships on the PC side, and I kind of know what I'm doing in that regard. But yeah, it's an interesting way to play the game for sure, with a limited number of these legendary ships in some battles you're going to be in. So would I recommend this game to somebody who's played PC World of Warships? I think the answer is yes, if you're someone who enjoys the mid to late game of the PC version, because that's what you're going to get in this game. You're going to get every battle pretty much starts around the 13-minute mark, I would say, on the PC version, on average. Around that time is where you're going to get the start of your battle, which is really, really, really fun. There's a few pain points for new players, for sure. But overall, I really do enjoy this game. If you have a console, whether it's an older Xbox or PS4, or you manage to find a PS5 or Xbox Series X, I would say definitely this game is worth picking up, especially because it's free. A little hint to newer players, you can get the Firepower Deluxe Edition, I believe it is, for around $40, and you get I think 4 premium ships and a bunch of premium time and some doubloons and different things. It's actually an amazing deal, and that's actually what I purchased, and that's how I got the Kamikaze and a couple other ships like Arizona and that kind of thing. It's a great way to get into the game if you want to spend a bit of money. But yeah, I enjoy this game. It's fun. It's a more relaxed console experience, of course. You're playing on your couch, but it's a good time. I think there's a lot more fun to be had in this than maybe on the PC version. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and I hope you have a great day.